poor mother with baby turns in her music box to buy milk, and when he opens it, he breaks down upon seeing the photo inside. The rain was hitting hard against the windows of Miller's clock and watch repair. Alexander Sterling checked his watch for the 4th time in 10 minutes. The repair was supposed to be ready by 5, and it was already past 5:30. "Sorry for the delay, Mr. Sterling." Old Mr. Miller appeared from the back, wiping his hands on a grease-stained rag. "Your timepiece is ready. The mainspring was jammed." Alexander nodded and moved closer to the counter, about to take the box, when the door opened with a jingle of the bell. A woman walked in, carrying a baby in her arms. She was drenched. Her blonde hair clung to her pale face. Her thin shirt stuck to her body. The baby was crying loudly, that desperate, chest-piercing cry. "Shh, Leo, please," she whispered, rocking the little one. "Mommy will figure it out. It'll be okay, my love." Alexander paused mid-motion. Something in her voice, in the contained despair, made him stay there. The woman hurried toward the counter, trying to soothe the baby with a worn cloth that was already wet. Her hands were shaking. "Mr. Miller, I need to sell something," she said, her voice strained. The man frowned and crossed his arms. "Claire, dear, I've told you I don't buy used items. This isn't a pawn shop. Please," her voice broke. "I need to buy formula for the baby. He hasn't stopped crying since yesterday. I have nothing left at home." Alexander felt his chest tighten. Leo continued to cry, stretching his tiny hands into the air as if trying to grasp something that could make the hunger go away. Claire kissed his forehead repeatedly, murmuring words that sounded like a prayer. She pulled something out of her worn purse and placed it on the counter with extreme care, an antique music box. Alexander recognized it immediately, hand-carved wood, oxidized metal details on the lid, the kind they manufactured decades ago. It was scratched, marked by time, but it still held a peculiar beauty. "How much can you give me, sir?" Claire asked, her voice trembling. "Any amount will do. I'll take whatever it is." Miller picked up the box and turned it from side to side, examining the scratches. "Claire, this isn't worth much. It's old, scratched. Maybe $15, $20 at most." "I'll take it," she said too quickly. $20. "When can you pay me?" "May I see it?" Alexander's voice cut through the conversation. They both turned their heads. Claire looked at him properly for the first time. She saw the impeccable suit, the expensive watch on his wrist, the polished leather shoes. He completely stood out in that place. "Of course," she replied, confused, adjusting Leo on her hip. Miller passed the box to Alexander, who held it with both hands. It was heavy. He slowly ran his fingers over the carvings, feeling every groove. "Can I open it?" She nodded quickly, not understanding his interest. Alexander carefully turned the side key. The melody began. Soft, nostalgic. A song he knew from somewhere distant, buried in childhood memories. The notes floated in the air, filling the silence. Even Leo stopped crying for a moment, turning his little head toward the sound. Alexander opened the lid completely, and a photograph fell onto the counter. He picked it up with fingers that began to tremble. The world stopped. It was a blonde woman with light eyes, smiling at the camera with that smile that lit up any room. She wore a simple white summer dress with blue flowers and held a picnic basket. In the background, a park with green trees and a clear blue sky. The sun illuminated her face in a way that only happens in old photos. He knew that face better than any other. He knew that sorely missed smile. He knew the silver ring on her finger, an heirloom from his grandmother. He even knew the small pearl earring she always wore. This photo, Alexander's voice came out rough, almost inaudible. He held the picture with both hands and brought it closer to his face. "It can't be!" Claire frowned, adjusting Leo, who had started to fidget again. "What? What is it?" Alexander slowly raised his eyes. They were red, shining with tears. "That's my mother." The silence was immediate and heavy. Miller dropped his rag on the floor. Claire opened her mouth. but no words came out. Even Leo was quiet, as if sensing the gravity of the moment. Alexander looked back at the photo, reverently running his fingers over the edge. He carefully turned it over. On the back, in her cursive handwriting, "Summer 1998, best day." He remembered that day with painful clarity. He was 10. Eleanor had prepared sandwiches, chocolate chip cookies, cold lemonade. They spent the whole afternoon laughing, running on the grass, flying a colorful kite. It was one of the last times he saw her truly happy. "How do you have this?" Alexander took a deep breath. "Where did you get this photo?" Claire adjusted Leo better in her arms. The baby watched Alexander with wide eyes. "I received this box when I was a little girl," she began slowly. "From a lady named Eleanor Sterling." Alexander raised his head sharply. "Eleanor Sterling," he repeated. "Yes," Claire confirmed, surprised by his reaction. "She volunteered at the community center where my mother and I lived. She always brought things for the children. Sweets, books, clothes, toys. She was special. This box was a gift she gave me when I was 7. She paused. "I never opened the compartment underneath. I didn't know there was a hidden photo." Alexander touched the photo again. His fingers were shaking. He traced the outline of his mother's face, that smile he missed so much. Leo, suddenly, stretched his tiny hand toward the image. His little fingers opened and closed in the air. Ah! The baby babbled, trying to reach it. Alexander looked at the boy. Something inside him broke and reorganized at the same time. He lowered the photo so Leo could touch it. The baby placed his small hand over the image, his blue eyes fixed on Eleanor's face, as if he recognized something beyond the paper. "She was special, wasn't she?" Alexander murmured. Claire nodded slowly, her light eyes welling up. "She was... very much. Always kind, always present. I was just a scared child living in a shelter with my mother. We had nothing, but Eleanor made sure to visit us every week. She hugged me, asked how school was, brought chocolates hidden in her pocket. She had this way of making any child feel seen, you know, important, loved." Alexander closed his eyes and pressed the photo against his chest. Eleanor Sterling, his mother, the woman he loved deeply but to whom he never reciprocated while she was alive, the woman he ignored in recent years because he was busy building his empire, the woman who died alone in the hospital while he was closing deals. He took several deep breaths. When he opened his eyes, Claire watched him with empathy. "Don't sell it," Alexander said firmly. "Please, don't sell this box." She blinked, confused. "But I need to—" "I'll buy the formula," Alexander interrupted her, handing the box back. "And anything else you need. But don't sell this. This box has history, it has love. If my mother gave it to you, it's because you deserved it. She didn't give gifts haphazardly." Claire held the box with both hands. Tears fell. "Sir, I can't accept that. I don't know you." "Yes, you can," he insisted. "And my name is Alexander." Alexander turned to Miller. "Where is a pharmacy?" 2 blocks left, on the corner of Elmwood Street." Alexander nodded, picked up the box with his repaired watch, and left the shop. Claire stood still. Leo started crying again, quieter now, a tired cry. "That's Alexander Sterling, Claire," Miller said. "Owner of the Sterling Group, one of the wealthiest men in the city." She widened her eyes. "What?" Before he could answer, the bell rang again. Alexander returned. He was carrying 3 large bags. He placed everything on the counter. 2 large cans of powdered formula, a box of diapers, baby wipes, ointment, and a brand new feeding bottle with teddy bear designs. "This should help," he said, looking at Leo. "For a week." Claire covered her mouth. Tears streamed down uncontrollably. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to." Alexander picked up a can, read the instructions, and opened it. He grabbed the bottle, rinsed it with water that Miller brought, filled it, and mixed the powder. "Here," he offered. "He needs this now." She took it with trembling hands and placed it in Leo's mouth. The baby grasped it firmly and sucked desperately. In seconds, the crying stopped. Alexander watched. Leo was drinking with his eyes half closed, his little hands holding the bottle. Claire looked at her son with love and exhaustion, and then it happened. Leo stopped feeding, turned his face, looked at Alexander with those light blue eyes, and smiled. It was only for a second. A tiny, milk-wet but genuine smile. Alexander felt something inside his chest break and mend. "That was his first smile today," Claire whispered. "All day he just cried." Alexander smiled back. "Then it was worth it." The rain eased. Miller handed Alexander the box with his watch. "No charge today, Mr. Sterling." Alexander put it away and looked at Claire. "Do you live far?" "About 6 blocks." Alexander looked up through the window. It was still drizzling. "In the rain with a baby and those bags?" He raised an eyebrow. "Let me give you a ride." Claire hesitated. "Alexander, you've done too much already. It's no trouble, I promise." She looked at Leo, who was feeding peacefully, and sighed. "Okay, thank you." The car was comfortable. Soft leather seats, a scent of wood and coffee. Alexander improvised support in the back seat with the bags and his folded jacket. Claire held Leo as Alexander drove slowly. "What's the address?" 237 Maplewood Street. He typed it into the GPS. They were silent for minutes. Claire looked out the window. Leo had fallen asleep, his tiny hand holding onto her shirt. Alexander looked in the rearview mirror. The baby sleeping, clinging to his mother. Pure trust. Something in him moved profoundly. "I apologize for asking," he began. "But Leo's father..." Claire sighed. "He's not in our lives. He never wanted to be. When he found out I was pregnant, he disappeared. He blocked my number, moved cities. I haven't heard from him in over a year." "I'm sorry to hear that," she shrugged. But Alexander saw the pain. "It's life. We move on." He nodded. "And you?" Claire asked. "Your mother. Is she still?" "No," Alexander answered softly. "She passed away 3 years ago, heart attack. I was in a meeting. I didn't even get to say goodbye. I'm so sorry, Alexander." He took a deep breath. "Me too. Every day I regret not spending more time with her." The silence returned, lighter now. "I didn't know she did volunteer work," Alexander admitted. "I always thought she just took care of her own things. I was always busy, working, expanding the company, traveling. I never asked what she did on weekends." Claire smiled sadly. "She was amazing with the kids. She brought stories, candy, hugs. She made us feel important, you know? Even when everything around us said we weren't. She truly saw us." Alexander felt his throat tighten. Leo stirred and murmured quietly. Without thinking, Alexander reached back and gently patted his foot. Leo sighed and fell back asleep. Claire watched, surprised. "You're good with children." Alexander chuckled softly. "I have no experience. I've never held a baby before, but it feels natural." They arrived at Maplewood Street. Alexander stopped in front of 237. An old building, peeling paint, rusted stairs. He got out, grabbed the bags, and opened the door for Claire to get out with the sleeping Leo. "Thank you," she said, "for everything. You have no idea how much this means." Alexander looked at her, at the baby, at the music box under her arm. He pulled a business card from his pocket. "Claire, if you need anything at all, call me. Text me. Show up at the office." "It doesn't matter what time." She took the card, read it, and her eyes widened. "Alexander Sterling Group, you're the owner?" He gave a shy smile. "I am, but that doesn't matter. My mother helped you when you were a child. She saw something in you. Now it's my turn to continue what she started." Claire held back tears. "Thank you, Alexander." "Truly." He nodded and got back into the car. Before driving away, he looked in the rearview mirror. Claire was climbing the stairs with Leo in her arms, the bags hanging from her elbow. and the music box pressed against her chest. Alexander drove home in silence, but his mind lingered on that staircase, on that baby, on that struggling mother. And on the memory of Eleanor, who even after passing away was still changing lives. On that rainy afternoon, something inside him had changed forever. He didn't know it yet, but that encounter was only the beginning of something much bigger, a story that would transform all of them. 3 days had passed since the meeting at the repair shop. Alexander parked the car in front of the Maplewood Street building and looked through the window. The peeling paint looked even worse in daylight. He took a deep breath before getting out. He climbed the rusted stairs carefully, avoiding the steps that looked loose. He found number 237 and knocked on the door. Light footsteps. The door opened just a crack. Claire appeared, her light eyes wide with surprise. "Alexander." "Hi," he said, feeling awkward. "I just wanted to check on Leo, see if the formula was enough." She hesitated, biting her lip. She glanced back at the apartment, then back at him. "He's fine. The formula helped a lot." Alexander nodded but didn't move. Can I see him?" Claire stood still for a few seconds. Alexander saw the doubt in her eyes, the natural fear of letting a stranger inside. But then she sighed and opened the door. "Come in." The apartment was smaller than Alexander imagined. A simple studio apartment, with a single bed pushed against the wall, an old sofa with springs showing, and a tiny kitchen with a stained sink. The smell of warm formula filled the air, and then he heard it, a little sound on the floor. Leo was crawling toward him, his small hands slapping the cold floor. When he saw Alexander, the baby stopped and gave a huge smile. Leo babbled, stretching out his little arms. Alexander felt his chest tighten in a good way. He bent down and extended his hand. Leo grasped his finger with surprising strength. "Hey there, champ," Alexander murmured, smiling. "You're feeling better, huh?" Leo laughed, a high-pitched, pure sound. Claire closed the door and crossed her arms, watching the scene. "He hasn't stopped crawling since yesterday. He keeps looking for things to explore." Alexander looked around while Leo held his finger. It was then that he truly saw the old refrigerator in the corner, the door ajar. He could see inside, almost empty. A carton of milk, half a dozen eggs, a bottle of water. In the other corner, a makeshift clothesline tied with string between 2 nails on the wall. Baby clothes hung there, tiny, some with visible holes. There was no heater, no television. There was almost nothing. Alexander felt something clench inside his chest. It wasn't pity. It was something deeper. Respect, perhaps. Admiration for someone fighting so hard with so little. "Sorry about the mess," Claire said softly, adjusting one of the clothes on the line. "There's no mess at all," Alexander replied sincerely. "You take such good care of him." She gave a small, tired smile. "I do what I can." Leo let go of Alexander's finger and crawled to Claire, grabbing the hem of her pants. She picked him up easily, kissing his forehead. "Let me show you something," Claire said suddenly. She went to the bed and bent down, pulling an old shoebox from underneath. She returned to the sofa and gestured for Alexander to sit. He sat next to her, maintaining a respectful distance. Claire opened the box. Inside were old photographs, some yellowed letters, a worn teddy bear. She searched through the photos until she found a specific one. "Look at this." Alexander took the photo. It was old, faded. It showed 3 people. A small blonde girl about 6 or 7 years old, smiling with a missing tooth. Beside her, an older woman, thin with tired but kind eyes. And on the other side, hugging them both, Eleanor, his mother. Alexander felt his throat close up. "That's me," Claire pointed to the girl. "That's my mom, Laura, and that's Eleanor." Leo, in her lap, leaned forward. He stretched out his tiny hands and held the edge of the photo as if wanting to analyze it better. His little blue eyes moved from one face to the next. "He's curious," Claire smiled. "He looks at everything closely. Alexander couldn't take his eyes off the photo. Eleanor was smiling, that radiant smile he knew so well. She had her arms around Claire and her mother, as if they were family. "When was this?" he asked, his voice rough. "I think 2005. I was 6 years old. My mom had just lost her job. We were living in a temporary shelter. Eleanor showed up every week with food, as clothes, toys. She took this photo on a day she took us for a picnic in the park." Alexander touched his mother's face in the photograph. "She never told me about you." "Maybe she didn't want to brag," Claire said softly. "She was discreet. She did things because she wanted to, not because she needed recognition." Alexander nodded slowly. Claire extended the photo to him. "I think this belongs to you." He looked at her, surprised. "No, it's your memory. I can't." "She was your mother, Alexander. She helped us when I was little, and that memory will always stay with me. But you deserve to have this. You deserve to know what she did, who she was." Leo was still holding the edge of the photo, looking at Alexander with those innocent eyes. Alexander took the photo carefully, as if it were the most fragile thing in the world. He lightly folded it and put it in the inner pocket of his blazer, close to his heart. "Thank you," he whispered. Claire shrugged, but he saw the emotion in her light eyes. "Thank you for coming to see us." Alexander took a deep breath. He looked around again. The small studio apartment, the clothes on the line, the empty refrigerator, Leo playing without knowing the surrounding difficulties. "Claire," he began, choosing his words carefully, "I want to help." She tensed up. "Alexander, you've already helped too much. The formula, the diapers, the ride—" "No," he interrupted gently. "It's not about what I've already done. It's about what my mother would do if she were here. She didn't abandon you when you were a child. She showed up every week. She cared." Claire bit her lip, her eyes filling with tears. "And I want to do the same," Alexander continued, "not out of pity, not because I think you need charity, but because it's what she would do. It's what's right." Claire wiped away a tear that escaped. "I don't want to be a burden to you." "You're not," he said firmly. "You both are not." Leo chose that moment to stretch out his little arms toward Alexander. Claire looked at her son, surprised, and then at Alexander. He usually doesn't do that with strangers. Alexander held out his arms, and Claire, hesitantly, passed Leo to him. The baby settled into Alexander's lap, as if he belonged there. He rested his little head on his shoulder and sighed contentedly. Alexander felt something break inside him. A wall he didn't even know existed. "I want to do what my mother would do," he repeated, looking at Claire. "If you let me. Without intruding, without pressure, just be here. Help when you need it." Claire watched him for a long moment. She saw the sincerity in his eyes. She saw Leo completely relaxed in the lap of a man who had just entered their lives. And she saw something else. She saw kindness. She saw honesty. She saw someone who was just as lost as she was, looking for a purpose. "Okay," she finally whispered, "but with one condition." "What is it?" "You promise you'll be honest with me. If you want to stop helping, tell me. Don't disappear without a word. Leo doesn't deserve that." Alexander nodded seriously. "I promise," Leo murmured softly in his sleep, snuggling closer to Alexander. Claire smiled for the first time since he had arrived, a genuine smile that lit up her tired face. "I think he's adopted you already." Alexander looked at the baby sleeping in his arms and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Purpose, belonging, hope. "I think the feeling is mutual," he murmured. And in that small, simple studio apartment, smelling of warm formula and clothes drying on the line, 3 lonely lives began to intertwine. A struggling mother who never gave up, an innocent baby who only wanted love and safety, and a successful man who had everything except what truly mattered, until now. The following weeks brought a new routine. Alexander started showing up at the Maplewood Street studio apartment frequently. At first, it was once a week, then twice, then 3 times. He always called ahead. "Can I stop by today?" His voice sounded hesitant on the phone. "Of course," Claire would reply, and he could hear the smile in her voice. One Saturday afternoon, Alexander knocked on the door with a bag of groceries. Apples, bananas, fresh strawberries. Claire opened it, and before she could say anything, Leo appeared, crawling quickly across the floor. When he saw Alexander, the baby stopped. His blue eyes lit up. "Tata!" Leo shouted, stretching out his arms. Alexander laughed, surprised and touched. "He's calling you," Claire said, leaning against the doorframe. "You've become Tata." Alexander bent down, and Leo practically jumped into his arms. The baby grabbed Alexander's shirt collar and let out a high, happy laugh. "Hello, champ," Alexander murmured, lifting Leo in the air. The baby screamed with joy. Claire watched the scene with a pang in her chest. Leo had never had this. A man who showed up, who cared, who stayed. Alexander came in and placed the grocery bag on the small kitchen table. "I brought some fruit," he said, slightly embarrassed. "Are you comfortable with this? I don't want it to feel like I'm intruding or—" "Alexander," Claire interrupted him softly. "It's fine. I really appreciate it." He nodded, relieved. Leo wouldn't let go of him. He climbed onto his lap, climbed down, climbed back up, pulled Alexander's hair, clapped his hands on his face. "He's excited today," Claire laughed. "Me too," Alexander admitted. They sat on the old sofa. Leo stayed on the floor playing with worn building blocks Claire had found at a second-hand store. "Were you like this as a kid?" Claire asked suddenly. Alexander thought for a moment. "I think so. My mother used to say I couldn't stay still. I ran around the yard, climbed trees, came back covered in mud." Claire smiled. "Hard to imagine you covered in mud now." He laughed. "Yeah, corporate life takes that out of you." "And your mother, what was her childhood like?" Alexander turned serious. "Difficult. She grew up poor, very poor. The family barely had enough to eat. I think that's why she helped so many people later on. She knew what it was like to be in need." Claire nodded slowly. "My mother was similar. Laura always said that even without anything, we could share the little we had." "Is she still alive?" Alexander asked carefully. Claire shook her head. "She died when I was 15. Cancer. It was quick." "I'm sorry." "Me too. She was everything to me. After she was gone, I was alone. I went through shelters, relatives' houses who didn't want me." "It was difficult." Alexander briefly touched her hand, a gesture of comfort. "And now? What do you want for yourself? For Leo?" Claire looked at her son, who was stacking blocks with concentration. "I want him to grow up happy, safe. I want him to have opportunities I never had. And for me, I want a job, something stable." "Are you looking?" "I'm trying," she sighed. "But it's hard with Leo. I have no one to leave him with. Childcare is expensive, and most places won't hire a single mother with a young baby." Alexander frowned. "That's discrimination." "It's reality," Claire shrugged. "I'm used to it." Leo chose that moment to knock down his tower of blocks and let out a burst of laughter. Then he crawled to Alexander and pulled himself up to stand, leaning on his legs. "Ta-ta, look." The baby held up a red block. "Very cool." Alexander put on an exaggerated face of surprise. Leo laughed loudly, that contagious laugh of a small child. Alexander made a funny face while pulling his cheeks. Leo laughed even louder, clapping his hands. "Again," Claire encouraged, laughing too. Alexander made another funny face, this time crossing his eyes and pouting. Leo nearly fell off his lap from laughing so hard. He held onto Alexander's shirt to balance, his little face red with joy. Claire watched everything with a smile. She saw Alexander there, his expensive dress shirt stained with baby drool, his hair messed up by little hands, making ridiculous faces just to hear Leo laugh. He wasn't the image of the powerful businessman. He was just a man playing with a child, a man who could be anywhere, doing anything, but chose to be here. "You're good at this," she said softly. Alexander looked at her. At what? At being human. He blinked, surprised. "What do you mean?" "When I first saw you, I thought you were just another rich person helping out to feel good about yourself. But that's not it, is it? You genuinely care." Alexander became serious. "I do care, very much." Leo yawned and rested his little head on Alexander's shoulder. "I think someone is tired," Claire smiled. She held out her arms to take her son, but Alexander shook his head. "Let him stay. He's comfortable." Claire sat back on the sofa, closer now. The three of them stayed there in silence for a few minutes, Leo sleeping on Alexander's lap, Claire beside them, watching. "You know what's funny?" she said quietly so as not to wake the baby. "What?" "It's been a long time since I felt so peaceful. There's always some worry, bills to pay, running out of diapers, not enough food. But when you're here, I feel like I can breathe." Alexander felt his chest tighten. "I'm happy I can give that to you." "To both of you." Claire looked him in the eyes. Why are you doing all this?" Alexander thought about the answer. He could say it was for his mother, for her memory, for the legacy she left behind, but it wasn't just that. "Because you make me feel alive," he said honestly. "I had everything, Claire. Money, success, recognition. But I was empty. Completely empty. And then I met you. And suddenly, I don't know, waking up in the morning makes sense." Claire felt her eyes burn. "You're not just rich," she whispered. "You're human. Truly human." Alexander gave a sad smile. "It took me a long time to remember that," Leo murmured in his sleep, tightening his fist on Alexander's shirt. "He trusts you," Claire said. "And you." She took a deep breath. "I'm starting to—" Alexander nodded. "That's all I need." The afternoon passed like this. Quiet conversations, suppressed laughter so as not to wake Leo, childhood stories exchanged, shared dreams. And when Alexander finally left, as it was getting dark outside, Claire stood at the door, holding the now awake Leo. "Bye, Tata." The baby waved his little hand. "Bye, champ." Alexander waved back. He walked down the stairs with a heart lighter than it had been in years, and Claire closed the door, knowing that their lives were changing. Slowly, but changing. For the better. Alexander knocked on the studio apartment door on a Thursday afternoon, carrying 2 bags of groceries. He had brought milk, fresh fruit, bread still warm from the bakery, yogurts that Leo loved. The door opened slowly, and Alexander knew immediately that something was very wrong. Claire stood there. Her light eyes were red, completely swollen from crying. Her face was pale. Her hands shook as she held the doorknob. "Claire?" He rushed inside, even forgetting to greet her. "What happened? Are you okay?" She didn't answer right away. She just closed the door behind him and pointed with a trembling hand toward the kitchen counter. Alexander followed her gaze. There was a paper there, an official document. He approached and saw the large red letters, "Final Eviction Notice, Last Warning." He picked up the document and quickly read it. "Accumulated delay of 3 months in rent. Total amount due. Final deadline for move-out. Exactly 2 weeks. Threat of legal action." "Claire!" He turned to her, the paper in his hand. "I tried." Her voice came out broken, desperate. "I tried to negotiate with the landlord. I called, I texted, I went in person. I asked for more time. I promised I would pay. But he doesn't care. He said he's given too many chances, that there are other people interested in the apartment." Alexander looked around. The tiny studio apartment he had come to know. The old sofa where they had talked for hours. The makeshift clothes line with Leo's little clothes. The refrigerator he always tried to keep stocked. Leo was on the floor, sitting on the worn rug, and he was crying. But it wasn't a cry of hunger. It wasn't a cry of tiredness. It was different, a high-pitched, desperate, scared cry. "He's been like this since I got the notice," Claire said, picking her son up. "I think he senses it. Somehow he senses that I'm scared." She rocked Leo in her arms, walking back and forth. "Shh, my love. It's okay. Mommy is here. Shh." But it wasn't okay, and Leo knew it. Alexander placed the grocery bags on the table and approached. "How much do you owe in rent?" Claire hesitated. "Alexander, it's not your responsibility." "How much?" he insisted, firm but gentle. She sighed deeply. $1,200 in total. But that's not all, you see. Even if I can pay now, even if a miracle happens, I won't be able to pay next month's rent, or the one after. I don't have a job. I can't get a job with Leo. I just can't." Leo cried louder, his little hands gripping his mother's shirt. Claire rocked him more intensely, her own tears falling silently onto his little red face. "In exactly 2 weeks, we won't have anywhere to stay," she whispered, her voice breaking. "We'll be on the street, Alexander. Me and him. My baby will sleep on the street." Alexander felt his chest clench hard. He looked around the studio apartment. He saw the mold marks on the wall. He saw the window patched with duct tape. He saw Leo's clothes drying on the string. He looked at Claire holding the continuously crying Leo, her eyes full of fear. He looked at the baby, that boy who had learned to call him Tata, who laughed at the silly faces he made, who slept peacefully in his lap. He took a deep breath. "Stay with me." The silence was instantaneous. Even Leo stopped crying for a second. Claire raised her head abruptly. "What?" "Stay with me," Alexander repeated, firmer now, taking a step forward. "At my house, I have space, a lot of space. The house is too big for just one person. 3 empty bedrooms. A huge kitchen I never really use. You can stay there." "Alexander, I can't accept that." "Why not?" He took another step. "Give me one real reason. You need a safe place." "I have a safe place. It makes perfect sense. But it's your house, your privacy, your whole life." "My life is completely empty without you both in it," he interrupted her, his voice intense. "Don't you understand? Claire, I spend more time thinking about when I can come here than about any meeting. You matter to me a lot, more than I can explain." Claire shook her head, tears falling faster. "I can't be a burden on your life. I can't invade your home and depend on you like this. It's not right." "It's not dependence," Alexander said firmly. "It's help. It's support. It's what people who care do for each other. It's what families do." She let out a bitter laugh. "Family? Alexander, how long have we known each other?" "A few weeks." "So what?" He shrugged. "My mother met you when you were 7 and decided right then she was going to help. She didn't wait months. She didn't make a plan. She saw someone in need and acted. And I know this is fast. I know it sounds crazy, but I won't leave you homeless. I won't." Leo continued crying, quieter now, but still restless. Claire rocked him automatically. Alexander held out his arms. "Can I try to calm him down?" She hesitated for only a second before passing the baby over. Leo immediately snuggled onto Alexander's shoulder, his crying almost instantly diminishing. His tiny body relaxed, and then the baby did something completely unexpected. Leo raised his small hand and grabbed Alexander's index finger. He squeezed it with that surprising strength babies have. He held tight as if anchoring himself, as if saying yes when his mother couldn't. Alexander looked at Claire, his eyes shining. "See, even he's saying yes." Claire let out a wet laugh, mixed with sobs. "You are impossible, you know that. And you're stubborn," he smiled, rocking Leo gently. "But please, Claire, let me genuinely help this time. Not for 2 weeks, for as long as you need. Until you can stabilize, find a job, save some money. No rush, no pressure." Claire covered her face with both hands. Her shoulders shook as she let out all the fear, all the desperation, all the exhaustion. "I don't know what to say. I don't know how to thank you for something like this." "You don't have to thank me," Alexander said softly. "Just say yes." She took several deep breaths, trying to compose herself. She wiped her face with the back of her hand. She looked around the studio apartment that had been their home. She looked at the eviction notice on the counter. She looked at her son, finally calm in Alexander's lap. And finally, she looked directly into his eyes. "Okay," she whispered, her voice still trembling. "We accept." Alexander's house was absolutely everything the Maplewood Street studio apartment was not. Large, spacious, modern, clean, with huge windows that let the light in, with working heating, with comfortable furniture, with silence, too much silence. Claire walked through the door carrying Leo on her hip and a worn suitcase with all the clothes and belongings they owned. She stopped in the hall and looked around, completely stunned. "Alexander, this is enormous. It's a mansion." "It's not quite a mansion," he shrugged, slightly embarrassed. "But it's big, yes. I bought it about 5 years ago, thinking of having a large family one day. But it never happened, so it's just been me here." He showed her the whole house, the spacious living room with comfortable sofas, the modern kitchen with a center island and appliances Claire had only seen in magazines, the dining room with a table for 8 people, and then the bedrooms. "I thought this one would be good for you." Alexander opened a door on the second floor. Claire walked in and almost dropped her suitcase. It was huge, a king-sized bed with white linens, a spacious wardrobe, an armchair in the corner, a large window with a garden view and an ensuite bathroom. "Alexander, this is bigger than the entire studio we lived in. Leo can sleep here with you at first," he continued, "or there's another room next door if you prefer to keep him separate when he gets older. I have a crib stored that I can set up, or we can buy a new one." "Here is perfect," Claire interrupted him, emotional. "Too perfect." In the following days, the house began to undergo a silent but profound transformation. Claire meticulously organized the kitchen, arranged the immense cupboards that were empty, carefully placed her few belongings, as if afraid to take up too much space. But little by little, timidly, the house gained life. Leo's colorful toys began to appear scattered on the living room rug. Tiny clothes in the laundry room that had previously only washed suits. The sound of a baby's laughter and babbling echoing through the halls. And smell. The house gained a smell. The smell of home-cooked food. The smell of life happening. Alexander arrived home from work one Tuesday afternoon, tired from meetings. He opened the door and stopped completely. There was sound, not the silence that always greeted him, but real sound. Leo was on the rug in the living room playing with colorful toy pots and pans. He was banging one against the other with concentration, then laughing alone at the noise. He was barefoot, wearing a blue onesie, and from the kitchen came a gentle voice. Claire was humming while she cooked, a song Alexander didn't know, but which sounded beautiful. Alexander stood still in the entryway, briefcase in hand, just watching. The whole house smelled of home-cooked food, roast chicken, potatoes in the oven, something seasoned with garlic and herbs. A smell that made his heart clench in a good way. He couldn't remember the last time he had arrived home and felt this ta-ta. Leo saw him and dropped the toy pans. The baby braced himself on the sofa and pulled himself up to a wobbly stand. Alexander dropped his briefcase and approached. "Hey, champion, what are you up to?" Leo took a step, a real step, uncertain. Trembling. "Claire," Alexander called out, excited, "come see quickly." She came running from the kitchen, drying her hands. "What is it? Did something happen?" "He's trying to walk." Leo took another step, then one more, his little legs wobbly, his arms stretched out, seeking balance. Alexander crouched down on the floor, about 6 feet away. "Come on, Leo. Come here. You can do it." Leo looked at him with those blue eyes. Then he looked at the sofa, then back at Alexander. and he took another brave step. Claire quickly grabbed her phone and started filming, tears in her eyes. "That's it, my love. You can do it. Keep going." Leo took 2 more steps. 3, 4. He stumbled. Alexander caught him in midair before he fell, lifting the baby high. "You did it. You walked." Alexander spun around with Leo in his arms. The baby roared with laughter, clapping his little hands. Claire was openly crying now, still filming. His first steps. "I filmed it all. I managed to film it all." Alexander hugged Leo against his chest, feeling his own eyes sting. "So you are amazing, champ. Amazing." That evening, the 3 of them sat at the dining table together for the first time. Claire had cooked a simple but incredibly delicious dinner: herb-seasoned roast chicken, golden oven-roasted potatoes, fresh salad with garden tomatoes. Alexander chewed slowly, savoring it. "This is delicious. Seriously. Absolutely delicious." "Really?" Claire sounded genuinely relieved. "It's been so long since I cooked properly in a real kitchen. In the studio apartment, the stove barely worked." Leo was sitting in the high chair Alexander had bought. He was eating small pieces of chicken with his hands, making a mess and loving every second. Alexander looked around the large table. Claire on one side, smiling tiredly but happily as she helped Leo. Leo in the middle, happy and noisy and alive, and him on the other side. A family. It wasn't traditional. It hadn't followed any manual. It wasn't perfect, but it was absolutely real. And for the first time in years, Alexander didn't feel alone in his own house. "Thank you," Claire said suddenly, her voice low but sincere. "For what?" "For giving us a home. A real one. It's not just a roof. It's a real home." Alexander felt his throat tighten. "Thank you for agreeing to stay. For bringing life to this place. You have no idea what a difference it makes." Leo threw a piece of potato on the floor and laughed loudly at his own mischief. Claire rolled her eyes, but she was smiling. "Sorry about the mess he makes." "Never apologize," Alexander said with complete sincerity. "I love the mess." And he truly loved it. After years of living in an impeccable, all-silent, and completely empty house, the mess was exactly what he needed without knowing it. The mess meant life was happening. It meant laughter and crying and discovery. It meant family. It meant he was no longer alone, walking through empty rooms. When the 3 of them finished dinner and went to the living room to watch a cartoon Leo loved, Alexander realized something fundamental. That house had been just an empty structure for years. Now, finally, it was a home. A home full of life, noise, and love. And he wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. Alexander arrived home early on a Friday. He found Claire sitting at the kitchen table, surrounded by papers. She was chewing on the end of her pen, her face furrowed in concentration. "What are you doing?" he asked, placing his briefcase on a chair. She looked up, startled. "Trying to put together a resume, but I don't know if it's right." "Oh. It's been so long since I looked for a job." Thomas approached and looked over her shoulder. The paper contained basic information, but it was disorganized, without a clear structure. "Can I help?" Claire hesitated. "You don't have to. I know you already do too much. I want to help." He pulled up a chair and sat next to her. "Seriously." "Let me see." Leo was on the floor, playing with colorful building blocks. He was stacking one on top of the other with his tongue sticking out, concentrating. Alexander picked up his laptop and opened it. "Let's do this properly. First, we need to highlight your experiences. What jobs have you had?" Claire bit her lip. "I worked in a coffee shop for 2 years. I was a cashier in a clothing store for a while. Oh, and I helped out at a daycare for a few months before I got pregnant." "Perfect," Alexander started typing. "See, you have experience, customer service, handling money, childcare. That's valuable." She watched him typing fast, organizing the information into categories. You make it look easy. It's just a matter of presentation, he smiled. You have the skills, you just need to show them the right way. Leo knocked down his block tower and roared with laughter. Then he crawled to the table and pulled himself up to stand, leaning on Alexander's legs. Ta-ta, look! The baby held up a red block. Very cool, champ, Alexander praised, without stopping his typing. Claire smiled, seeing the scene. Alexander working on his laptop, Leo at his feet showing him toys, the three of them together, as if it had always been this way. Done. Alexander turned the screen. Take a look. What do you think? Claire read the resume. It was impeccable. Organized. Professional. It made her look far more qualified than she imagined herself to be. Alexander, this is amazing. It looks like I'm a different person. You are this person, he said seriously. You were just presenting it incorrectly. Leo decided at that moment that he wanted to participate. He reached out his tiny hands for the laptop and, before anyone could stop him, hit the keyboard. A random sequence of letters appeared on the screen. Leo, Claire laughed, picking him up. No, my love, that's Tata's. Alexander laughed too, deleting the random characters. He just wants to help. Right, champ. Leo clapped his hands, proud of himself. Sorry, Claire said, still laughing. No need. That was funny. Alexander saved the document and opened another file. Now let's practice the interview. What do you mean? I'm going to pretend to be the interviewer. You'll answer the questions. That way, you prepare yourself. Claire tensed up. I'm terrible at interviews. I get nervous. I say stupid things. I forget things. That's why we're practicing, Alexander insisted gently. Come, sit here across from me. She put Leo back on the floor with the blocks and sat in the chair opposite Alexander. She straightened her posture, took a deep breath. Ready? I think so. Alexander adopted a more formal and serious posture. Good afternoon, Claire. Thank you for coming in. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself? Claire opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Well, I'm a single mother. I have a 1-year-old son. I'm looking for a job because I need to support him and... Stop, Alexander interrupted softly. Don't start by talking about the difficulties. Talk about your qualities, your strengths. She frowned. But I don't have that many strengths. Yes, you do. He leaned forward. You are resilient. You work hard. You are responsible. You manage with little. You take care of a child alone while looking for a job. That's incredible, Claire. She felt her eyes sting. I never thought of it that way. Then start thinking that way. Alexander smiled. Let's go again. Tell me about yourself. Claire took a deep breath. I am a dedicated and responsible person. I have experience in customer service and I work well under pressure. I'm a mother, which has taught me to be organized and to prioritize tasks. Alexander clapped his hands. Perfect. See how much better that sounds? Leo clapped his hands too, imitating Alexander, not understanding why. They laughed together. Next question, Alexander continued. Why do you want to work here? Because I need money. No, he shook his head. Never be so direct. Say that you are looking for an opportunity for growth, that you admire the company, that you want to contribute with your skills. But what if I don't know anything about the company? Research it beforehand. Always research, Alexander said. Show interest. Show that you prepared. They spent the next hour practicing. Alexander asked tough questions. Claire stumbled on the answers. He corrected her patiently. She tried again. Leo played at their feet, occasionally trying to climb the chair or steal attention with happy shouts. Last question, Alexander said. What is your biggest flaw? Claire thought. I'm insecure. Turn that into a quality, he taught. Say Sometimes I'm too much of a perfectionist and I push myself too hard, but I'm learning to balance that. Isn't that lying? It's strategy, Alexander smiled. Everyone has flaws. The question is how you present them. Claire looked at him with admiration. How do you know all this? Years of corporate experience, he shrugged. And many bad interviews early in my career. It's hard to imagine you being bad at anything, Alexander laughed. Oh, I was terrible. In my first interview, I was so nervous I spilled coffee all over the interviewer. No. Yes, he laughed at the memory. Obviously, I didn't get the job, but I learned. Claire smiled. She liked these moments. When Alexander showed himself to be human, when he wasn't just the rich businessman, but just a man who had struggled too. Thank you, she said sincerely, for all this, for helping me without making me feel incapable. Alexander became serious. You are not incapable, Claire. Not in the slightest. You're one of the strongest people I know. Strong? She gave a humorless laugh. I was about to be evicted. I couldn't even feed my son properly. And yet you didn't give up, Alexander said firmly. Even with nothing, you woke up every day and tried. That is strength. Real strength. Claire felt the tears coming. No one had ever spoken to her like that. No one had ever seen strength where she only saw failure. You make me believe I can do it. Because you can. He held her hand for a second. You will do it. I believe in you. Leo chose that moment to throw a block that hit Alexander's foot. Oops! The baby yelled, laughing. Alexander picked up the block and threw it back softly. Leo picked it up and threw it again. I think someone invented a new game, Claire laughed, wiping her tears. At least he's letting us work, Alexander joked. Claire watched Alexander playing with Leo, throwing the blocks back, making the baby laugh. She saw the kindness in his eyes, the patience, the genuine care. She had spent so much time being suspicious, waiting for him to show some hidden interest. Some bad intention, but there was none of that. He was just good, genuinely good. And for the first time, she allowed trust to truly enter. Alexander? Yes? I trust you, she said simply. He stopped throwing the blocks and looked at her. He understood the weight of those words. What it meant for someone like Claire, who had been abandoned and disappointed so many times, to say that, thank you, he replied, touched. That means a lot to me. A whole lot. Leo yawned loudly, rubbing his eyes. I think someone is sleepy, Claire said, picking him up. Go put him to sleep. I'll finish formatting the resume and print some copies for you. Are you sure? Absolutely. Claire went upstairs with Leo in her arms. The baby was already almost asleep, his little head heavy on her shoulder. Alexander stayed in the kitchen, finishing the resume. But his mind wasn't on the document. It was on that afternoon, on the shared laughter, on Claire's tears when he said he believed in her, on the way she had said she trusted him. The bond between them was getting stronger. It wasn't just about helping someone in need. It was about partnership, mutual support, about building something together. And Alexander realized he no longer wanted to imagine his life without them, without Claire bringing life into the house, without Leo laughing and making a mess, without that feeling of belonging to something bigger than himself. He saved the final document and smiled. For the first time in a long time, the future looked full of possibilities, and he was eager to live every single one of them, beside them. The following weeks brought a subtle but significant change. Alexander started coming home from work earlier, much earlier. Before knew he would leave the office at 7, sometimes 8 in the evening. Now he was in his car by 5:30, driving home. It wasn't for the reports he needed to review. It wasn't for the dinner waiting for him. It was for them. One Tuesday, and he arrived at 5:40. He opened the door and heard laughter coming from the living room. Leo was on the rug, surrounded by scattered toys. Claire was lying on her stomach on the floor, at the baby's level, tickling him. I'm gonna get you, she said in a funny voice. Leo shrieked with delight and tried to crawl away, but he wasn't fast enough. Claire caught him and tickled his little tummy. The baby laughed so loudly that the sound filled the entire house. Alexander stood in the doorway, just watching, his heart squeezed in a good way. "Ta-ta!" Leo saw him and stretched out his arms. Claire turned her head, surprised. "You're home early." "Finished faster today," he lied. In reality, he had left 3 meetings unfinished. Alexander dropped his briefcase and went straight to the floor. He sat cross-legged on the rug. Leo immediately crawled toward him and started climbing. He used Alexander's knee as support, then his thigh, until he managed to flop into his lap. "Whoa!" Alexander laughed, holding the baby. "You're getting good at this." Leo snuggled into his lap, picked up Alexander's tie, and started examining it as if it were the most interesting toy in the world. Claire smiled, watching. "He loves it when you get here." "The feeling is mutual," Alexander said, stroking Leo's soft hair. "I'll finish dinner." She stood up, adjusting her clothes. "It's almost ready." Alexander stayed there on the floor with Leo on his lap, playing, but his eyes followed Claire as she moved around the kitchen. She had tied her blonde hair back in a simple ponytail. She wore jeans and a basic top. Nothing fancy, nothing elaborate. But to him, she had never looked more beautiful. Claire was humming while she stirred the pot. She tasted the seasoning, adjusted the salt. Alexander realized he could stay there for the rest of his life, just watching her cook, listening to that soft voice, feeling Leo relaxed on his lap. It was peace. Real peace. "What are you thinking about?" Claire asked without turning around. "How did you know I was thinking about something?" "You went too quiet." She looked over her shoulder and smiled. "Usually you're making Leo laugh." Alexander smiled back. "I was thinking about how good it feels to be here." Claire held his gaze for a moment. Something passed between them. Something unsaid. Something neither of them was ready to name. She turned back to the stove, her heart beating faster. Later after dinner, they were in the laundry room. Claire was taking clothes out of the dryer while Alexander held Leo. "Can you put him in the playpen?" she asked. "I'll fold this quickly." "Leave him with me. I'll help." Alexander sat on the sofa with Leo on his lap and started folding the tiny clothes with one hand. "You don't have to help," Claire said, but she was smiling. "I want to." They folded the clothes in comfortable silence. Leo picked up a tiny sock and tried to put it on his own head. Both of them laughed. "He's funny," Alexander said, removing the sock from the baby's head. "He's in the phase of testing everything," Claire explained. "Last week he tried to put his foot in his cereal bowl." "And did he succeed?" "He did," she rolled her eyes, "made the biggest mess." Alexander imagined the scene and laughed. "Sorry, but that's hilarious." "It's hilarious when you're not the one cleaning it up." But she was laughing too. Leo yawned and rested his head on Alexander's shoulder. His little eyes were getting heavy. "I think someone is tired," Alexander whispered. "He usually falls asleep around this time." Claire said softly, "Do you want me to take him?" "No, let him stay." They continued folding clothes, Alexander with one hand, the other holding the almost sleeping Leo. Claire picked up one of Alexander's dress shirts. "Can I fold yours too?" "Since I'm already here, of course." She folded it carefully. She realized she liked this, taking care of his clothes, being there doing something so simple and domestic. It was intimate in a way she hadn't expected. "Claire," Alexander said suddenly. "Yes." "Thank you." "For what?" "For letting me be a part of this." He looked at Leo sleeping on his lap. "Of your life. I know I'm not his father. I'm nothing official, but you let me participate anyway." Claire stopped folding and looked at him. "Alexander, you're not nothing. You're important, very important, to Leo and to me." He held her gaze. The air grew heavier, more charged. "You're important to me too," he said softly. "More than you know." Claire swallowed hard. She wanted to say something. She wanted to admit what she was feeling. But Leo murmured in his sleep, breaking the moment. She went back to folding the clothes, her heart pounding. Neither of them spoke about that exchange, about what was almost said, but they both knew. Something was changing between them, something deep and inevitable. On a Thursday evening, Alexander was in the kitchen helping Claire prepare dinner. She was seasoning the chicken while he was chopping vegetables. Leo was in his high chair, eating small pieces of bread and making little noises. Ta-ta. The baby babbled suddenly. Alexander stopped chopping. What did he say? Claire turned, her eyes wide. He's trying to say your name. Tata! Leo said clearer now, looking directly at Alexander. Alexander dropped the knife. He felt his eyes sting. He said my name. He did, Claire smiled, emotional. It's his first real word. Alexander approached the high chair. Leo stretched out his little arms. Tata. That's right, champ. Alexander picked him up, his voice trembling. That's right. I'm Tata. Leo clapped his tiny hands on Alexander's face, proud of himself. Alexander hugged the baby, closing his eyes tightly to hold back the tears. Claire watched, her hand on her chest. She saw the pure love etched on Alexander's face. She saw how he held Leo with such care, such tenderness, and she knew at that moment that she was lost, completely, irrevocably lost. She was in love with Alexander Sterling, but she couldn't admit it. Not yet. Maybe never. It was too risky. Too much was at stake, so she swallowed that feeling and went back to seasoning the chicken, pretending her heart wasn't racing. Alexander put Leo back in the high chair and returned to chopping the vegetables. Neither of them talked about the moment, about what it meant for Leo to call Alexander that. But they both knew the house was no longer just a place where they lived. It was a home, a real home, full of life, full of love, even if neither of them had the courage to say it out loud. Later that night, after putting Leo to bed, Alexander and Claire were in the living room. She was folding the last of the clothes. He was pretending to read something on his phone, but neither of them was truly focused on what they were doing. Claire, Alexander broke the silence. Yes? Can I show you something? She nodded, curious. Alexander went to the office and came back with a framed picture. It was the photo Claire had given him, Claire as a child, her mother Laura, and Eleanor. I put it in a frame, he said, sitting next to her on the sofa. I look at it every day in the office. Claire took the photo and smiled sadly. Your mother was beautiful. She was, Alexander agreed, and kind. And generous. And I was a terrible son. Claire quickly turned her head. Don't say that. But it's true, he sighed deeply. I spent years focused only on the company, on growing, expanding, making more money. My mother always asked for more time with me. She always said she wanted to see me more. And I always said next week or after this important meeting. He looked at the photo, his eyes shining. But next week never came. There was always another meeting, another deal, another excuse. Claire put her hand on his arm. Alexander. The day she got sick, I was closing a contract, he continued, his voice breaking. She called 3 times. I saw the calls, but I was in the middle of an important negotiation. I thought I could call her back later. A tear fell down his face. When I finally called, a doctor answered. She had had a heart attack, fallen at home alone. The neighbors heard the noise and called an ambulance. Alexander, you didn't know. She died alone in the hospital. He wiped his face with the back of his hand, waiting for me. And I arrived 20 minutes late. 20 damned minutes. If I had answered the phone, if I had left earlier, if I had prioritized her instead of that stupid meeting. His voice broke completely. He covered his face with his hands, and for the first time since they met, Alexander cried in front of her. It wasn't silent crying. It was deep, coming from a place of pain he had held onto for years. Claire dropped the photo and hugged him. She held him as he cried, stroking his back. "It's not your fault," she said firmly, holding his face with both hands and making him look into her eyes. "Alexander, look at me. You are not to blame for her death." "But if I had—" "No," she interrupted him. "Don't do this to yourself. Your mother knew how much you loved her. I know that because she talked about you." Alexander's eyes widened. "She talked about me. She did," Claire smiled through her tears. "When I was a little girl, she always used to say, 'My son is working hard. He's building something important. I'm so proud of him.' She understood, Alexander. She knew. But I should have been there. Life doesn't work that way," Claire said gently. "You can't control everything. You can't predict when someone will pass away. What matters is the love you shared, and she knew you loved her. I know she did." Alexander held Claire's hands, which were still on his face. "How can you be so sure?" "Because she gave me that music box," Claire explained, "with her photo in it. She said, 'One day, when you're a mother, you'll understand that love isn't measured in time. It's measured in moments. And the moments I have with my son are precious, no matter how few there are.'" Alexander closed his eyes, new tears falling. "She said that. She did. I was 8 and didn't fully understand. But now, being Leo's mother, I understand. She loved you, Alexander, unconditionally, and she was proud of you." He pulled Claire into an embrace. He held her as if she were the only thing keeping him whole. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for telling me that." She hugged him back, feeling her heart explode in her chest. They stayed like that for several minutes, embracing, in silence, just feeling each other's presence. Then they heard a little noise. They turned and saw Leo in the doorway. He had climbed out of his crib and made his way down the stairs alone, a new skill he had learned. The baby was drowsy, rubbing his eyes, but he clearly sensed something. He sensed that they needed him. Leo walked with wobbly steps toward the sofa. Alexander and Claire moved apart slightly. Claire picked Leo up, but the baby didn't stay with her. He leaned over and stretched his little hand out to touch Alexander's hand. He grabbed his finger and squeezed. It was a simple gesture, innocent but loaded with meaning. It was comfort. It was love. It was connection. Alexander looked at the tiny hand holding his finger. He looked at Leo's sleepy blue eyes. He looked at Claire, holding the baby and watching him with tenderness, and something inside him changed completely. It was no longer about helping someone in need. It was no longer about honoring his mother's memory. It was about them, about that bond that had formed, that family that had been born from the most improbable circumstances. He loved that baby. He loved that woman. And for the first time since his mother's death, he didn't feel guilty for being happy. "Come here, champ." Alexander took Leo from Claire. The baby snuggled between the two of them, his head on Alexander's shoulder, his little hand still holding Claire's. The three of them stayed like that on the sofa. An imperfect family. An unconventional family, but a real family. And at that moment, in that silent room with only the soft light of the lamp, all three of them knew there was no going back. They belonged to each other now. Forever. Alexander woke up on a Saturday morning with a clarity he hadn't felt in years. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of the house. Claire humming in the next room, Leo babbling something unintelligible, the smell of coffee coming from the kitchen. And then the idea came. It wasn't new. It was there, dormant, waiting for the right moment to awaken. He got up quickly, put on a t-shirt and went downstairs. Claire was in the kitchen making pancakes. Leo was in his high chair, eating banana slices. "Good morning, she smiled. "You're up early today." "I had an idea," Alexander said, his voice full of excitement. "An important idea." She turned the heat down lower. "What kind of idea?" "Come, I need to show you something." She picked Leo up and followed him to the office. Alexander was already opening his laptop, his fingers flying over the keyboard. "What are you doing?" Claire asked, curious. "Wait." He opened some files, started typing fast. "I'm putting something together. Just 1 more minute." Leo tried to reach the keyboard, but Claire held his little hands. "Be patient, my love. Let Tata work." After a few minutes, Alexander turned the screen around. It was a project, architectural plans, budgets, detailed descriptions. The Eleanor Home Community Center. Claire read it aloud and felt her throat tighten. "Alexander, I want to honor my mother," he said, his voice firm but emotional. "Truly, not just by keeping photos or visiting her grave. I want to do something she would do. I want to help families the way she helped." He clicked on another tab, showing more details. A complete community center, food distribution, clothes, job counseling, psychological support, free childcare for mothers who need to work. Everything my mother would have wanted to do if she had the resources. Claire read every line, the tears already starting to fall. "The Eleanor Home," she whispered. "It's perfect. It's not just a tribute," Alexander continued. "It's a necessity. How many women like you are out there, alone, with children, without help, without hope? My mother helped one at a time, but I can help hundreds." Leo, sensing the energy in the air, clapped his hands. "Papa!" he shouted, all excited. Alexander and Claire laughed, wiping their tears. "I think he approved," Claire smiled. Alexander looked at her with an intensity that made her heart race. "Claire, I want you to work with me on this." She blinked, surprised. "What do you mean?" "At the center, I want you to coordinate the family support services. No one understands the mothers here like you do. No one knows what it's like to be in need, to struggle alone, to fear the future. You lived it. You can help other women because you know exactly what they're feeling." Claire shook her head. "Alexander, I don't have the qualifications. I didn't finish college. I don't have the experience." "You have something better than a diploma," he interrupted her. "You have empathy, you have strength, you have the real experience of having survived. That's worth more than any certificate. But I don't know if I can do it." "I know you can," Alexander said firmly. "I believe in you, completely." Claire held Leo tighter, trying to process everything. A job, a purpose, a chance to help other women like her. It was more than she had ever dreamed of. "Are you sure?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Absolutely." She looked at the screen. She saw the name, the Eleanor Home. She imagined the lives that could change, the families that could be helped. And then she looked at Alexander. She saw the sincerity in his eyes, the hope, the determination. "Okay," she whispered. "I accept." Alexander smiled so broadly that she couldn't help but smile back. "We are going to do this together," he said. "The 3 of us." Leo clapped his hands again as if he understood perfectly what was happening. And in that office, with plans spread across the screen and a baby applauding, a new chapter began. 6 months later, the Eleanor Home opened its doors. The building was large but welcoming, painted in soft shades of blue and white, with a front garden and a colorful playground on the side. On opening day, dozens of people showed up. Curious families, single mothers with children in their arms, local reporters, volunteers wanting to help. Alexander gave a short speech at the entrance. "This center is named after my mother, Eleanor Sterling. She dedicated her life to helping those in need. And today we continue her work. The doors of the Eleanor Home are open to everyone. No judgment, no bureaucracy, just help." People applauded. Claire stood beside him, holding Leo. She wore simple clothes but was radiant. When the doors officially opened, she was the first to step inside, the first to welcome the families. And immediately she became the heart of the place. A timid young mother came in, with a newborn baby in her arms. "Can I help you?" Claire approached with a gentle smile. I heard you distribute diapers." The girl was barely 20. I don't have any more at home. Of course. Come with me. Claire guided her to the supply room. How many do you need? Just one package would help a lot. Take 3, Claire placed them in her hands. And listen, we have a support group for young mothers every Tuesday night. You can come. Bring your daughter. There's childcare here during the meetings. The girl started to cry. Thank you so much. I feel so alone. Claire hugged her. You're not alone. Not anymore. Alexander watched from afar, leaning against the wall. He saw Claire hugging that mother. He saw the gratitude on the girl's face. He saw Claire's natural compassion, and he felt his heart clench. It wasn't just ordinary admiration, it was something deeper, more intense. He was completely in love with her. The weeks turned into months. The Eleanor home prospered beyond all expectations. Claire became the soul of the place. She knew every family by name. She remembered the children's birthdays. She knew who needed a job, who needed food, who just needed someone to talk to. The mothers adored her. They said she truly understood, that she didn't judge, that she genuinely cared. Claire saved my life, a woman said in an interview for a local newspaper. I was about to give up. She helped me find a job, gave me clothes for my son, and most importantly, she made me feel like I was worth something. Alexander managed the financial and organizational side. He ensured everything ran smoothly, but he always found time to go down and visit the daycare. Leo spent his days there. He played with other children. He was cared for by trained and loving staff, but he was special. Everyone knew. Here comes the mascot, one of the caregivers would announce when Leo arrived in the morning. The baby had become everyone's darling. The older children played with him. The mothers picked him up. The staff lined up to feed him. "For he's the star here," Claire would laugh. Alexander would show up several times a day just to see Leo. He would sit on the daycare floor and play. He made airplane sounds with his food. He built block towers that Leo loved to knock down. People saw it and smiled. "You two are a lovely family," an older lady commented one day. Alexander and Claire exchanged glances. They didn't correct her. They didn't explain that they weren't married, that technically he wasn't Leo's father, because deep down, they were a family, in every way that mattered. Working together further strengthened the bond between them. They spent their days at the center, solving problems, helping families, planning events. At night, they returned home together. They ate dinner together. They put Leo to sleep together. It was a routine, a shared life, and with each passing day, it became harder to ignore their feelings. One afternoon, Alexander was in the center's office when he looked out the window. Claire was outside in the garden. She was talking to a very young mother who was crying. Claire was holding her hands, speaking softly, calming her down. The girl finally smiled. She hugged Claire tightly. Alexander watched the whole thing. He saw Claire's kindness, her patience, the genuine love she had for helping people. And he felt his heart clench so hard it almost hurt. He wasn't just admiring her, he loved her, completely, deeply, irrevocably. And he no longer knew how to hide it. The center grew quickly. 6 months after the inauguration, they had served over 300 families, distributed tons of food and clothing, helped dozens of mothers find jobs, and the stories began to spread. Newspapers wrote about the Eleanor home. TV channels did reports. Other cities wanted to replicate the model. "You are changing lives," a reporter said during an interview. "How does that feel?" Alexander looked at Claire. "Proud," he answered. "Very proud. My mother would be happy." "And you, Claire?" the reporter asked. She picked Leo up before answering. "I feel grateful. I was one of the people who needed help, and now I can give back. There is no better feeling." After the cameras turned off, Alexander and Claire were left alone in the office. Leo had fallen asleep in her arms. "You were amazing in the interview," Alexander said. "I was nervous," she admitted. "I'm not good with cameras." "It didn't show. You were perfect." She smiled, adjusting Leo better in her lap. "The center is growing fast." It is, and it's all thanks to you. It's not just me, it's both of us, it's teamwork. Alexander approached. He sat next to her on the sofa. Claire, I need to tell you something. She turned to him, her heart racing. What is it? He opened his mouth, closed it. The words were there, on the tip of his tongue. I love you. But before he could say it, the door opened. One of the staff members appeared. Sorry to interrupt. We have a family here who needs urgent help. Claire stood up immediately. I'll go. The moment passed. Alexander was left alone in the office, his heart still racing. He had almost said it. He had almost confessed. But perhaps it was better this way. Maybe it wasn't the right time, or maybe he was afraid of the answer. Later that night, back home, the three of them had dinner together as always. Leo could eat on his own now. He made a mess, but he was learning. He's growing up so fast, Claire commented, wiping sauce from his face. He is, Alexander agreed. Soon he'll be running around. Heaven forbid, she laughed. I can barely keep up with him now. Alexander watched her laughing. He saw the happiness on her face, the lightness that didn't exist when they first met. She had changed. She was no longer the desperate, frightened woman from the repair shop. She was confident, strong, fulfilled. And he wanted to be by her side forever. Not just as a friend, not just as a work partner, as something more, but he still didn't have the courage to risk what they had. So he held on to that feeling, locked it up deep inside, and continued pretending everything was fine. That being friends was enough, even though he knew it wasn't. The Eleanor home continued to grow, touching lives, changing destinies. And Alexander and Claire continued working side by side, closer every day, more connected every day, more in love every day. But neither of them had the courage to take the next step. So they carried on, taking care of Leo, helping families, building something beautiful, and holding on to that unspoken love, at least for now. Because deep down, they both knew. It was only a matter of time. The love they felt was too big to stay hidden forever. And when it was finally revealed, it would change everything. Forever. The center had closed an hour ago. The last employees had left, waving and wishing good night. Silence took over the building, broken only by the distant sound of cars on the street. Alexander was in the office, reviewing some financial reports, but his mind wasn't there. He couldn't concentrate on the spreadsheets shining on the computer screen. He looked through the glass window that faced the common area, and he saw her. Claire was sitting on the reception sofa, rocking Leo in her arms. The boy, who was no longer such a baby, was almost asleep, fighting against slumber with all the stubbornness a child of almost 2 could have. No, Mommy. Not Seepy, Leo mumbled, rubbing his eyes with closed fists. Yes, you are, my love, Claire smiled, kissing his forehead. You played all day. You're tired. I'm not, he insisted, but his voice was already slurred, drawn out. Claire was humming softly, a gentle melody that Alexander had heard many times. She rocked Leo with rhythmic movements, her fingers stroking the boy's hair. Alexander dropped his pen. He forgot the reports. He stood up slowly and left the office. He approached in silence, not wanting to break the moment. Leo's eyes were already closed. His breathing was deeper. His head rested heavily on Claire's shoulder. Ta, ta, the boy murmured in his sleep, his little hand clenching and unclenching in the air, as if looking for something. Alexander felt his chest tighten. That boy had become the center of his world, that smile. Those laughs, those tiny hands that held his finger with such confidence, and Claire, who had walked into his life carrying a baby and a music box. Claire, who had transformed his empty house into a home full of life. Claire, who worked beside him every day, changing lives with that immense heart. He loved her. God, how he loved her. Alexander moved closer. Claire sensed his presence and raised her eyes. She smiled tiredly but happily. He wouldn't admit he was sleepy, she whispered. Stubborn, just like his mother, Alexander joked softly. She made a funny face, but she was smiling. Alexander sat down next to her on the sofa. He watched Leo sleeping peacefully, completely surrendered to slumber. He watched Claire holding her son with such love, such dedication, and something inside him broke. He couldn't hold it in anymore. He couldn't pretend it was just friendship, just partnership, just convenience. Claire, his voice came out rough, heavy with emotion. She turned her head, her light eyes meeting his. Yes. Alexander took a deep breath. His heart was pounding so hard he was sure she could hear it. I don't want to be alone anymore. Silence settled between them. Heavy. Intense. Claire held her breath. She didn't say anything. She just watched him. Waiting. Alexander continued, the words coming straight from his heart. I spent years living in a huge and empty house, working non-stop. Building an empire that meant nothing. I had everything, Claire, everything money could buy, but I was completely empty inside. He lightly touched Leo's tiny hand, who was sleeping peacefully. And then I met you. And suddenly, everything made sense. Waking up in the morning made sense. Coming home made sense. Living made sense. Claire felt her eyes sting. Tears began to form, blurring her vision. Alexander, I want a family, he said, his voice firm now, decided. I want a real family, with you, and with Leo. A tear escaped and rolled down Claire's face. I know this might sound crazy, Alexander continued quickly. I know we met in an unconventional way. I know I'm not technically Leo's father. But I love him as if I were. And I love you, Claire. I love you in a way I've never loved anyone before. Claire quietly sobbed, trying not to wake Leo. Tears were falling freely now, wetting her face. Alexander took her free hand. He laced their fingers together. He squeezed firmly. You don't have to answer now. You don't have to decide anything today. I just needed you to know. I needed to be honest, because keeping this inside was killing me. Claire looked at his hand holding hers. She looked at her son, sleeping in her arms. She looked back into Alexander's eyes, which waited with a vulnerability she had never seen before, and she smiled through her tears. Alexander, we are already a family. He blinked, surprised. What? We are already a family, she repeated, squeezing his hand. We don't need a piece of paper. We don't need a formal declaration. We are already a family, Alexander. We have been since the day you walked into Miller's clock and watch repair and found that photo. Since the day you bought Leo his formula. Since the first dinner we had together. We were already family, Alexander. You just hadn't realized it yet. Alexander felt his throat close up. His own tears started to fall. And I love you too, Claire whispered, her voice trembling but sincere. I love you in a way that frightens me, in a way I never thought possible. You gave us everything, Alexander, home, security, purpose. But more than that, you gave us love, real love. He touched her face with his free hand. He brushed his thumb across her wet cheek, wiping away the tears. May I? She nodded, barely able to breathe. Alexander leaned in slowly. Claire closed her eyes, and they kissed. It was soft, delicate, full of tenderness and accumulated love. A kiss that meant promise, commitment, future. When they separated, Leo stirred in Claire's arms. He opened his sleepy blue eyes and saw their faces close together, and he smiled, that big, innocent smile of a happy child. Mommy, ta-ta, he murmured, his eyes already closing again. But before falling completely back asleep, Leo clapped his tiny hands together, faint, sleepy claps, but full of approval. Alexander and Claire laughed softly, the tears still falling, but now out of pure happiness. I think he approved, Alexander said, his voice choked. Of course he approved. Claire rested her head on his shoulder. He always knew before we did. The next morning, Alexander retrieved something he had been keeping for weeks. The music box. He had had it restored. The carvings had been polished, the internal mechanism repaired, the melody tuned. He placed it on the living room side table. Claire appeared carrying Leo, who had just woken up. "What is that?" she asked, surprised. "Open it," Alexander smiled. She approached and carefully turned the side key. The melody began to play, that same nostalgic song. Soft, beautiful, perfect. Claire touched the box reverently. She thought of Eleanor, the gentle woman who had changed her life when she was a child. "She would be happy," Claire whispered. "Your mother. She would be so happy to see this." "I know," Alexander wrapped her in a hug, with Leo between them. "And I think somehow she sees, she knows." The music continued playing, filling the house with that melody that had united 3 improbable lives. Eleanor Sterling's legacy lived on, here, in those 3 embracing, in that love that had been born from the most unlikely circumstances, because in the end, family is not just blood, it's choice, it's presence, it's love, and they had chosen each other, forever.